Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swamini Tinamane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Pastyata Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Hare Krishna. Okay, so welcome, and today we are commissioned to discuss this extraordinary chapter from Srimad Bhagavatam. It's extraordinary because of so many reasons, not only that it's actually the Srimad Bhagavatam, the beautiful story of the personality of Godhead and his devotees, plural. Life is eternal, is not monistic, it's not a monotone discussion. It's about the eternal activities of the Lord and his devotees. So this is also extraordinary because it's describing how a living entity, and in this case, Diti, one of the wives of Kasyapa Muni, was harboring ill feelings towards Indra, who had been, in her view, responsible for the death of her two sons, irrespective of the fact that actually it was the way her sons were conceived that caused them to be outrageous demons. And therefore they would be killed by the Supreme Lord because nobody else could do it. And that was his pastime anyway, to show the world that no one can overcome the biggest demons except the Lord himself. And that if we want to be protected, we have to take shelter of the Lord. So anyway, Diti was harboring this deep-seated envy or malice against Lord Indra, and she wanted to kill him. And so, as was discussed in the previous chapter, how she performed this Puṁsavana ritualistic ceremony on the advice of her husband. So many things are discussed there. And in this way, she became somewhat purified, and she became, instead of just the mother of the demons, she became a Vaishnavi, a devotee of the Lord. And this is actually a very great good fortune when somebody can turn their life around and actually become fixed up in devotional service to Krishna. So many messages are contained in these chapters of Srimad Bhagavatam. And this particular chapter is Sukadeva Goswami, who's describing the science of Krishna to Parikshit Maharaj. And he's answering one of Parikshit Maharaj's questions, that how was it that Diti was able to give up her envious attitude, and how she actually became so purified that she was able to have a straightforward, frank, and honest conversation with Indra, whom she'd plotted to kill, and how they could actually discuss nicely with each other, which is a very good lesson, because after all, we find in our Hare Krishna movement, sometimes devotees are at odds with each other. And it's very interesting to see that if there's real advancement in devotional service, then even those devotees who maybe can't even stand each other can actually become situated on a friendly basis and engage in loving service to the Lord as advanced spiritual living beings. So here we go. This chapter is describing how one can perform the Puṁsavana ritualistic ceremony at the request of Maharaj Parikshit, who has wanted to understand how does it work and what do you have to do if you want to follow this ceremony and you want to become a first-class Vaishnav or Vaishnavi. So the first thing that comes to mind is that this chapter, as is explained in the chapter summary, I think it's a good idea to read the chapter summary that is provided, and then we can follow on from there, because there are also some amazing purports which deserve some discussion that Prabhupada has actually included in this chapter. So let's read. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This chapter explains how Diti, Kashyapa Muni's wife, executed Kashyapa Muni's instructions on devotional service. During the first day of the bright fortnight of the moon in the month of Agrahayan, November-December, every woman following in the footsteps of Diti and following the instructions of her own husband should begin this Puṁsavana Vrata. In the morning, after washing her teeth, bathing, and thus becoming purified, she should hear about the birth mystery of the Maruts. Then, covering her body with a white dress and being properly ornamented, before breakfast she should worship Lord Vishnu and Mother Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, Lord Vishnu's wife, by glorifying Lord Vishnu for his mercy, patience, prowess, ability, greatness, and other glories, and for how he can bestow all mystic benedictions. While offering the Lord all paraphernalia for worship, such as ornaments, a sacred thread, scents, nice flowers, incense, and water for bathing and washing his feet, hands, and mouth, one should invite the Lord with this mantra: Om Namo Bhagavate Mahapurushaya Mahanubhavaya Mahavibhuti Pataye Saha Mahavibhutibir Balim Upaharami. Then one should offer 12 oblations in the fire while chanting this mantra: Om Namo Bhagavate Mahapurushaya Mahavibhuti Pataye Svaha. One should offer obeisances while chanting this mantra 10 times. Then one should chant the Lakshmi Narayan mantra. If either a pregnant woman or her husband regularly discharges this devotional service, both of them will receive the result. After continuing this process for 1 full year, the chaste wife should fast on the Purnima, the full moon day of Kartik. On the following day, the husband should worship the Lord as before, and then observe a festival by cooking nice food and distributing prasad to the brahmanas. Then, with the permission of the brahmanas, the husband and wife should take prasad. This chapter ends by glorifying the results of the Puṁsavana function. So, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, this is very significant. This first verse, of course, points out that Maharaj Parikshit is on the platform of wanting to please the Supreme Lord Vishnu. Because after all, this is what the devotees are actually for pleasing the Lord. There is no other function other than engaging in the loving service of the Lord to please him. And the Lord is very pleased to see the devotees' sincere endeavor. And this chapter is aimed at giving one who is capable of actually executing this vow the opportunity to engage in this way in a very devotional way and becoming progressively advanced in devotional service. So here we can see Parikshit Maharaj, he's understanding that by observing this vow, one can please the Supreme Lord Vishnu. And this is why he wants to hear about it. Because after all, every living being is actually the eternal servitor of the Lord. As has been discussed in the previous chapter, the problem for us is we're stuck in the bodily conception of life. And oftentimes the ladies are more inclined to material enjoyment than the men. But in this Kali Yuga, the distinction becomes very blurred, in actual fact. But the idea being that if husband and wife are actually very nicely living together in devotional service, then by following this process, if they're so able to execute the functions of this, or whatever functions they can, then nice progress can be made in pleasing the Supreme Lord. So particularly what is mentioned here is that the wife should follow the instructions of her husband, and a woman should begin this regulative devotional service with a vow of penance, for it can fulfill all one's desires. Now, we saw from the previous chapter, Diti, she had malevolent desires towards Lord Indra, and her husband, Kasyapa Muni, he was actually very advanced, and he could understand this was actually a terrible thing that Diti wanted to do, and that Indra didn't deserve to be killed. So he contrived to produce this information on this Puṁsavana yajna, this Puṁsavana vow, in order to actually purify her heart so that those malevolent desires could disappear and go away by being her heart being purified. So it's clear that before beginning the worship of Lord Vishnu, the woman should hear the story of how the Maruts were born. And under the instruction of qualified brahmanas, which are quite hard to find in this age, in the morning she should wash her teeth, bathe, and dress herself with white cloth and ornaments. And before taking breakfast, she should worship Lord Vishnu and Lakshmi. So another very strong point is made here, that Vishnu and Lakshmi are to be worshipped together. Not that one worships either Lakshmi for one's material benefit, or that one just worships Vishnu, because the two go hand in hand. They're both generally considered Vishnu Tattva, one being the Shakti and one being the Shaktiman. Lakshmi is the Shakti, and Vishnu being the Shaktiman, the one who possesses the different Shaktis. So the idea being that they're not separate. They're always to be worshipped together, just like we worship Radha Krishna and Sita Ram, like this, Lakshmi Narayan, because this is the proper way of addressing the Lord. And in fact, the Shakti comes first, Radha Krishna, Sita Ram, Lakshmi Narayan. This is the proper etiquette. So looking at this, she should pray to the Lord, and she should offer very humble prayers, because the whole process is to actually change our mentality from being the wannabe controllers and enjoyers of the world to becoming very humble servants of the Lord. And so this next verse is very significant, She should pray to the Lord as follows: My dear Lord, you are full in all opulences, but I do not beg you for opulence. I simply offer my respectful obeisances unto you. You are the husband and master of Lakshmi Devi, the goddess of fortune, who has all opulences. Therefore, you are the master of all mystic yoga. I simply offer my obeisances unto you. And Krishna has declared this in Bhagavad Gita, that if we do these four things, Manmana Bhava Madbhakto Madhyaji Mam Namaskaru, that if we simply always think of him and become his devotee and worship him and offer him our humble obeisances, then he says, in this way, surely you will come to me without fail. So, of course, we cannot go back to Krishna in an unpurified state. And to worship the pure, we have to become purified. So this process is very, very nice. Prabhupada quotes in the purport how everything is provided by the Supreme Lord. We have no reason to be anxious about how we will get the necessities of life. Actually, Srivas Thakur, he exemplified this very nicely. Because Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he told Srivas Thakur that you don't go anywhere, you don't go out of your house, and you just live and worship the Lord, and everything will be provided. There's no difficulty. So one may say, well, how is that possible? But actually, Krishna makes extraordinary arrangements. And Lord Chaitanya asked Srivas, he said, Srivas, you're being maintained with your whole family. What will happen if the Lord doesn't provide the food for you and the necessities of life? Then Srivasi said, then I'll just clap my hands. And then if the next day the Lord doesn't send anything, I'll clap my hands again. And if the Lord still doesn't provide anything on the third day, I'll clap my hands. And if nothing comes, then I'll simply go and jump in the Ganga. So he can take that as the mercy of the Lord. So obviously it depends on one's level of faith and advancement. We have to practice depending on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Prabhupada mentions that Krishna is explaining in Bhagavad Gita, Esham Nitya Bhayuktanam Yoga Kshemam Vahamyaham in 922. And that therefore a pure devotee won't ask anything from the Lord. He simply offers the Lord his respectful obeisances. And the Lord is prepared to accept whatever the devotee can secure to worship him. Even Patram Pushpam Palam Toyam. He says, Yo me bhaktya parachati. If someone offers me with love and devotion, even a leaf or a flower or some fruit or some water, he's very pleased to accept these things. And he says there's no need to artificially exert oneself. It's better to be plain and simple and with respectful obeisances offer to the Lord whatever one can secure. The Lord is completely able to bless the devotee with all opulences. And this is a fact we might have experienced. I certainly have experienced in so many ways that Krishna provides so many necessities of life when we simply try to serve him to the best of our ability. And in this regard, I can share a little story that happened to me back in 1999. Rath Yatra, London Rath Yatra was being prepared, and I was supposed to be in charge of putting that together. And our beloved temple president at the time in London, he told me, Tribhangananda, there's no money and there's no men. Why haven't you got a plan? And so I thought, okay, well, I just have to depend on Krishna. And I didn't have any money. I was actually pretty much broke at the time. Actually broke. And I had to drive from my home in the Malvern Hills to London, which is over 100 miles, to arrange for the next step of the Rath Yatra and get some funds so I could continue getting everything ready for London Rath Yatra, which was interesting because I was living over 100 miles away from London and I had to organize the London Rath Yatra Festival, which was quite a scream, but it was really amazing. And on the way down to London, this one time, I had no money and I had no petrol in my car. And, really, I got to running on vapor. And I got to this petrol station. I had like maybe £2 or £3 left in my pocket. I thought I'd better put some petrol in the car and just hope for the best. So I started pumping the gas at this one petrol station in the middle of nowhere. And it seemed like nothing was coming out. Actually, the dial just didn't move. And so I just carried on trying to pump and pump and pump. And after a while, I thought, well, I better just go in and hold my hands up and say in the petrol station, I'm really sorry, but I don't know if I've taken any petrol, but the register isn't coming up with anything. And when I went inside, the lady in the desk said, oh, no, you haven't had any petrol. Yeah, there's nothing to pay. You haven't had any petrol. So I thought, okay, what the heck? I don't know what's going on. I got back in the car and I got 3/4 of a tank of petrol and Hare Krishna on my way to London. So Krishna is wonderful at providing the necessities of life and also putting us in situations whereby we have to be totally dependent on him, which is actually the real nature of the jiva, to be dependent on Krishna. So I just thought I'd mention that in connection with this purport, because so many lessons we learn in the course of discussing these verses from Srimad Bhagavatam. So the devotees glorifying Krishna is saying, you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Master of everyone. You've got all the opulences. And this is the mood in which one can perform this vow, if one is so able to do so. Krishna is saying, Prabhupada is explaining that although he's full in himself, he nonetheless wants all the living entities to surrender unto him so that they may engage in his service. If we're proud and puffed up, there's no possibility of being engaged in devotional service. And if a devotee becomes proud, as Prabhupada explains in the Krishna book, if he becomes unduly proud, then Krishna changes his attitude towards the devotee. So this we can also sometimes experience. So anyway, Krishna, he is very happy to accept devotional service. Prabhupada gives some amazing examples in this purport. Apart from offering him a leaf, a flower, or fruit, or water in devotion, he says, sometimes the Lord, as the child of Mother Yasoda, requests his devotee for some food as if he were hungry. Sometimes he tells his devotee in a dream that his temple and his garden are now very old and that he cannot enjoy them very nicely. Thus he requests the devotee to repair them. Sometimes he's buried in the earth, as in with Madhavendra Puri's deity, Gopal, and if unable to come out himself, he requests his devotee to rescue him. And this is particularly relevant to Srila Prabhupada. Sometimes he requests his devotee to preach his glories all over the world, although he alone is quite competent to perform this task. Even though the Supreme Personality of Godhead is endowed with all possessions and is self-sufficient, he depends on his devotees. Therefore, the relationship of the Lord with his devotees is extremely confidential. Only the devotee can perceive how the Lord, although full in himself, depends on his devotee for some particular work. So Krishna's telling Arjuna that, don't worry, Arjuna, you're going to fight on this battlefield, but actually I've already killed all these warriors. There's no difficulty. You can be but an instrument in the fight. And this is the proper attitude for a devotee, how we can be utilized by Krishna to serve him in the way he wants, not in the way that we want, but in the way that he wants. And this way, we can actually be successful in our devotional service. So that means having a humble, actually humble attitude towards the Lord. So Prabhupada mentions here, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was quite competent enough to spread his name and mission all over the world, but still he depended upon his devotee to do this work. So this is actually our work to assist Srila Prabhupada and Lord Chaitanya in spreading the Krishna consciousness movement. Somehow or other, we have to try to be engaged in doing this with a humble attitude. And in this way, the Lord will be very pleased, because in this age, what is the real yajna that has to be performed? Yajna sankirtane prayi yajantihi sumedasha. That actually those who are endowed with sufficient brain substance will worship the Lord by means of Sankirtan Yajna. This is actually what is required of us, to find ways to broadcast the glories of the Lord and explain to others about Krishna, how to bring everyone and ourselves at the same time closer and closer to Krishna. So we've all been called. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has requested everyone, Bharata Bhumite Haila Manusya Janmajar, Janma Sartika Karikara Para Upakar, that those who are fortunate who've come from the land of India, it's their duty to make their own lives perfect and make other lives perfect also. So charity begins at home. We practice our devotional service and we preach. We try to find ways of helping others understand about Krishna. So Prabhupada makes this point in this verse, text 5, considering all these points, the most important aspect of the Supreme Lord's self-sufficiency is that he depends on his devotees. This is called his causeless mercy. So if we can understand this sweet relationship of the Supreme Lord and his devotee, and then actually we can understand Krishna very nicely. And if we can understand very nicely, then we can help others understand nicely. That there's a loving exchange between the jiva and the Supreme Lord. And the Lord agrees to be dependent on his devotee, like Krishna is dependent on his mother and is dependent on his friends. So in this way, Krishna has engaged us. Prabhupada has engaged us. So looking at this, another very important point is, after profusely offering obeisances unto Lord Vishnu, the devotee should offer respectful obeisances unto Mother Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, and pray as follows. O wife of Lord Vishnu, O internal energy of Lord Vishnu, you are as good as Lord Vishnu himself, for you have all of his qualities and opulences. O goddess of fortune, please be kind to me. O mother of the entire world, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. So Lakshmi Devi, she is the principal energy of the Lord. And because actually everyone in their spiritual forms are expansions of the goddess of fortune, Prabhupada mentions this here, that the idea being that Lakshmi is the form of our own body, our spiritual bodies, our spiritual minds, our spiritual intelligence, and our senses, and that actually we're meant for the loving service of the Lord, as is Lakshmi. And Prabhupada points out that Lakshmi, if we try to keep Lakshmi at home without Vishnu, then that will be very dangerous. because Lakshmi is not meant for our enjoyment. Lakshmi is meant to be utilized in the service of the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, we become entangled. And instead of, Prabhupada mentions how Lakshmi, if she's worshipped alone, then she's represented as the material potency, the external potency. But actually, she's the internal spiritual potency of the Lord. And if we want to be connected to that internal spiritual potency, we have to worship her along with the Lord. And that will be very nice, because then we'll be connected to the Supreme Lord, as opposed to being picked by the loving lotus feet of Maya Devi. Right, let's have a look. Now, here, this mantra is mentioned particularly. I won't read the whole mantra in Sanskrit, but the translation is, "My Lord Vishnu, full in 6 opulences, you are the best of all enjoyers and the most powerful. O husband of Mother Lakshmi, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you, who are accompanied by many associates such as Vishvaksena. I offer all the paraphernalia for worshipping you." And Prabhupada has mentioned in this point that for someone who's offering deity worship, then it's very important to chant this mantra. And the various items, such as water for washing his feet, hands, and mouth, and water for his bath. One must offer him various presentations for his worship, such as garments, a sacred thread, ornaments, scents, flowers, incense, and lamps. So basically, this is deity worship. So if one can do this at home, then this is actually very nice. We should try to be engaged in this way, in focusing on the Lord, because 2 things are required. The temple worship is there for our internal purification, for our external purification, like taking bath and performing all these things. And the Sankirtan Yajna is meant for our internal purification. So these 2 things are meant to go hand in hand. So important points for deity worship. So, and then there are various mantras to be chanted while offering obeisances. So Krishna again is saying, worship me and offer your obeisances to me. These are 2 of the processes. And in the course of doing this, we become devotees, and we gradually become able to think of Krishna more and more, to the extent of 24/7. Hari Bol. Let's hope that happens. So next, if one desires all opulences, his duty is to daily worship Lord Vishnu with his wife, Lakshmi. With great devotion, one should worship him according to the above-mentioned process. Lord Vishnu and the goddess of fortune are an immensely powerful combination. They're the bestowers of all benedictions and the sources of all good fortune. Therefore, the duty of everyone is to worship Lakshmi Narayan. And here Prabhupada mentions that sometimes the Mayavadi sannyasis, they address each other, Om Namo Narayan, and they consider each other or other living beings as Daridra Narayan, because the Lord is in the heart, which is actually extremely offensive, because the Lord is extremely powerful. There's no question of him being Daridra or poor Narayan. He's the owner of everything. Everything is manifested from him. How can he be a poor man? So people have misconceptions. And the whole point of studying these literatures and hearing in the association of devotees is to purify us of our misconceptions. Because if we do that, then we can understand everything very clearly and make nice progress. So then, again, Prabhupada, Bhagavatam makes the point, one should offer obeisances unto the Lord with a mind humbled through devotion. This is very important. While offering dandavats by falling on the ground like a rod, one should chant the above mantra 10 times. Then one should chant the following prayer. So this following prayer is there. My Lord Vishnu and Mother Lakshmi, goddess of fortune, you are the proprietors of the entire creation. Indeed, you are the cause of the creation. Mother Lakshmi is extremely difficult to understand because she's so powerful that the jurisdiction of her power is difficult to overcome. Mother Lakshmi is represented in the material world as the external energy, but actually she is always the internal energy of the Lord. So we can focus and meditate on these things and gradually become clear about the situation of everything and everyone. So here, then, my Lord, you are the master of energy, and therefore you are the supreme person. You are sacrifice, yajna personified. Lakshmi, the embodiment of spiritual activities, is the original form of worship offered unto you, whereas you are the enjoyer of all sacrifices. So the two are identical. You can't separate Lakshmi. You can't separate the Lord and his potencies. They're inseparable. Just like you can't separate the sun from the sunshine. It's not possible. So then, this is actually very important to understand because we tend in this world to think separately about ourselves from Krishna, but actually we're little particles of Krishna. We're actually eternal, fragmental parts. Mamaivamso jiva loke, jiva bhuta sanatana. Lakshmi is the original worshipper of the Lord, the goddess of fortune. Her original feature is Srimati Radharani, and as Prabhupada has pointed out, as Radharani is meant only for the loving service of Krishna, we're also tiny expansions of Srimati Radharani, the original goddess of fortune, because all the goddesses of fortune are expanded ultimately from Srimati Radharani, Krishna's internal pleasure potency. And therefore, because we are expansions, tiny expansions, we're also meant for the loving service of the Supreme Lord. So some points are made about how sometimes people think that she's Jiva Tattva, but actually in her original feature, she's actually Shakti Tattva. She's actually not separate from the Lord. But it's only when a living being is imbued with the opulences and the potencies of Lakshmi that she can be considered in that form Jiva Tattva. But actually in her original feature, she is distinctly Vishnu Tattva, not Jiva Tattva. So let's have a look. You are both the supreme rulers and benedictors of the three worlds. Therefore, my dear Lord Uttama Shloka, may my ambitions be fulfilled by your grace. And here's another point, that we may have so many material ambitions. Like Dhruva Maharaj, he had material ambitions. He wanted to get a kingdom greater than that of Lord Indra. He wanted to be the top. But then when he became purified, he no longer wanted any of these things. He said, my dear Lord, I came to you looking for pieces of broken glass, but instead I have now found the most priceless gem. And this is the situation when we actually become purified by performing devotional service. Then our material ambitions, they may even be fulfilled, but actually they no longer become interesting, because actually our real ambition becomes to please and satisfy the Supreme Lord with loving service. So The ambitions may be fulfilled by the Lord's grace, or they may not, depending on if they're helpful for our devotional service. So Sukadeva Goswami continued, thus one should worship Lord Vishnu, who is known as Srinivas. Srinivas means actually that the Lord is situated, that is the Lord's chest, where Mother Lakshmi resides. So one should worship Lord Vishnu, who is known as Srinivas, along with Mother Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, by offering prayers according to the process mentioned above. After removing all the paraphernalia of worship, one should offer them water to wash their hands, mouths, and then one should worship them again. So continuously, a nice process of devotional service. And thereafter, with devotion and humility, one should offer prayers to the Lord and Mother Lakshmi. Then one should smell the remnants of the food offered, and then again worship the Lord and Lakshmi Ji. So the process is to be continuously engaged, somehow or other, in the loving service of the Lord. And this point is made, accepting her husband as the representative of the Supreme Person. A wife should worship him with unalloyed devotion by offering him prasad. The husband, being very pleased with his wife, should engage himself in the affairs of his family. And in the purport, Prabhupada simply says, the family relationship of husband and wife should be established spiritually according to the process mentioned above, because this is the recipe for actually peaceful household life. That's a fact. Between the husband and wife, one person is sufficient to execute this devotional service. Because of their good relationship, both of them will enjoy the result. Therefore, if the wife is unable to execute this process, the husband should carefully do so, and the faithful wife will share the result. So this is actually difficult for people to understand often in this age, because we're living in an age of so many artificial ideas. For example, the women's liberation movement and the whole idea, because the Bhagavatam puts everything in perspective, that actually there is a natural relationship between husband and wife. A man requires a woman and a woman requires a man, because they have different features and capabilities, and they're meant to work together in harmony in Krishna consciousness. If they're working together without Krishna consciousness, then the harmony becomes a discord, and it doesn't become ultimately a very pleasant situation. It may last for some time, but because the living beings have different desires, individual desires, there will inevitably be disagreement and misunderstanding. And in this age, we know only too well that so many marriages end in disaster and divorce, which is a very sad state of affairs, because how can society be peaceful unless the basic unit of family life is actually encouraged and understood and valued? Then there's no way that people can actually be happy in this world. So Prabhupada mentions here in his purport, the relationship between husband and wife is firmly established when the wife is faithful and the husband sincere. Then even if the wife, being weaker, is unable to execute devotional service with her husband, if she's chaste and sincere, she shares half of her husband's activities. So this has been discussed in the previous chapter, I know. And the idea being that Lord Brahma, if you recall, you saw that after the first day, that the living entities were still detached. So he created woman from the better half of a man, and in this way, attachment was developed. So we're living in a situation where men and women are attached to each other, but to free ourselves from that attachment, we require to purify our hearts by the process of devotional service. And this is the process. If she's chaste and sincere, she shares half of her husband's activities. So the whole point of accepting this Vishnu Vrata, which is a vow in devotional service, Vrata means a vow, and one should not deviate from its execution to engage in anything else. This is how, if one is going to execute it, one has to see it through. So we've all got to be pretty careful and clued in that we can actually stick with it in order to do it nicely. So here, Sukadeva Goswami mentions, by offering the remnants of prasad, flower garlands, sandalwood pulp, and ornaments, one should daily worship the brahmanas and worship women who peacefully live with their husbands and children. Every day, the wife must continue following the regulative principles to worship Lord Vishnu with great devotion. Thereafter, Lord Vishnu should be laid in his bed, and then one should take prasad. In this way, husband and wife will be purified and will have all their desires fulfilled. Pretty potent stuff. And the chaste wife must perform such devotional service continuously for 1 year. After 1 year passes, she should fast on the full moon day in the month of Kartik, October, November. And on the morning of the next day, one should wash oneself after worshipping Lord Krishna as before. One should cook as one cooks for festivals, as stated in the Griha Sutras. Sweet rice should be cooked with ghee, and with this preparation, the husband should offer oblations to the fire 12 times. Thereafter, he should satisfy the brahmanas, and when the satisfied brahmanas bestow their blessings, he should devotedly offer them respectful obeisances with his head, and with their permission, he should take prasad. And before taking his meal, the husband must first seat the acharya comfortably. This is the etiquette. And along with his relatives and friends, should control his speech and offer prasad to the guru. Then the wife should eat the remnants of the oblation of sweet rice cooked with ghee. Eating the remnants ensures a learned, devoted son and all good fortune. So actually, the idea of the son is called putra. Put is a kind of hell, and tra means deliverance. So the idea of having a good son is that if one's son is actually good and sane and intelligent and devoted, then he can save the parents and the forefathers from a hellish condition of life, should they inadvertently or whatever wind up in the wrong place. So it's very important to have a good son. So this is a very practical method for making sure one gets a good son. If this vow or ritualistic ceremony is observed according to the description of Shastra, even in this life, a man will be able to achieve all the benedictions he desires from the Lord. A wife who performs this ritualistic ceremony will surely receive good fortune, opulence, sons, a long-living husband, a good reputation, and a good home. So these are good, useful things. Prabhupada comments that in Bengal, even today, if a woman lives for a long time with her husband, she's considered very fortunate, actually. So his purport, actually, let's read this. A woman generally desires a good husband, good children, good home, prosperity, opulence, and so on. As recommended in this verse, a woman will receive all these desirable benedictions, and a man will also be able to receive all benedictions from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, by performing this particular type of vrata, A man and a woman in Krishna consciousness will be happy in this material world. And because of being Krishna conscious, they will be promoted to the spiritual world. So this is a pretty good recommendation in this chapter. And the conclusion of all this is very nicely explained in these last three verses, 26 to 28. These are glorifying this vrata. So let's read this and then we can discuss if there are any questions. If an unmarried girl observed this vrata, she'll be able to get a very good husband. If a woman who is avira, who has no husband or son, executes this ritualistic ceremony, she can be promoted to the spiritual world. A woman whose children have died after birth can get a child with a long duration of life and also become very fortunate in possessing wealth. If a woman is unfortunate, she will become fortunate, and if ugly, she will become beautiful. By observing this vrata, a diseased man can gain relief from his disease and have an able body with which to work. If one recites this narration while offering oblations to the Pitas and the demigods, especially during the Shraddha ceremony, the demigods and inhabitants of Pitriloka will be extremely pleased with him and bestow upon him the fulfillment of all desires. After one performs this ritualistic ceremony, Lord Vishnu and his wife, Mother Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, are very pleased with him. O King Parikshit, now I have completely described how Diti performed this ceremony and had good children, the Maruts, and a happy life. I've tried to explain this to you as elaborately as possible. And this is how, instead of Diti getting a child who would kill Indra, she had 49 wonderful children who became good friends of Indra and benedictors of the world as faithful demigods and friends of Indra. So I think it's time to see if there are any quick questions. Sorry, I've gone on quite a long time, but it'd be nice if there are some questions. So how do we get these? Anyone?
Okay, thank you, Prabhu. I'll if anyone has any questions, please raise your hand and I'll call you out, or you can just unmute and ask Prabhuji. Okay, I'll start off if that's okay, Prabhu. Now, if someone wishes to start the process of deity worshipping, but they don't know how to perform it properly, should they still perform it to their best of their abilities, or not?
Well, the best thing is, if one wants to worship the Lord, it's not a matter of speculation. One should consult learned devotees, and one can learn from them at what level one can begin one's worship and how one can progress in that worship. It's not a matter of speculation. It's a matter of following the direction, because Krishna has made this very clear. Evam parampara praptam imam raja shayo vidu. One has to follow the parampara system. If one tries to make up one's own process of worship, it will not be effective. So, but one can begin with Gaurnitai worship, and because they don't consider any offense, whereas the worship of Jagannath, he's 50% merciful, or Radha and Krishna, they're not so merciful. So one should be very careful to take the guidance of advanced devotees before one actually tries to worship the deity. And it can be a very simple process. It doesn't have to be a very complicated process, but one should learn from a devotee rather than trying to make it up as you go along.
Okay,
Is that okay?
that's perfect. Thank you, Prabhu. So Devi Mataji, would you like to ask your question, please?
Hare Krishna, thank you very much for today.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I'm born in Muslim family. I have been born in Muslim family, and I learned about the Krishna consciousness very, 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 very far from my young time. I was old. And physically, I am not able to do so much more than what I do, that I'm chanting, and I have a Tulsi plant that I'm taking care of. And I was worried in the beginning because I have heard about deity worship and so on and so on. And I was worried about that. But then I got to learn that Prabhupada says in this time, in Kali Yuga, it's chanting is much important than the detail. And now I get to hear that deity worship is very important. How to understand the whole thing, because I'm not so good in that. I have picture that I offer the food from those. I have a mini altar where I open the door, and then I have a picture. I put the food in front of the picture. I don't have any deity to put clothes on or anything. So what to do with that? Does that mean that I'm doing wrong? Because I got afraid. I'm honest. I got afraid when you say that. I thought, whoa, what to do now?
Okay, thank you very much for that nice question. Actually, here's an interesting point. This is mentioned in the Bhagavatam, that the deity doesn't have to be a three-dimensional form. The deity can be a form, a painted form, made of wood, stone. It can be even a form within the mind. But the idea is that one should meditate on the form of the Lord. And particularly if one has pictures of Gaur Nitai, the way Prabhupada actually established the temples in the beginning as Guru Gauranga temples. We had pictures of Srila Prabhupada in the disciplic succession, and we had pictures of Lord Chaitanya and the Panchatattva, his associates. And in this way, we worshipped the pictures very nicely, and we made nice progress by worshipping these deities in the form of these pictures. So, because they're not different from the Lord. It is a misconception, because and there's people often have this misconception that to worship the form of the Lord, you require a three-dimensional form. But even a two-dimensional form is actually three-dimensional because you can visualize the transcendental form and body of the Lord. And the process is actually beginning with Shravanam and Kirtanam, because really, if we want to make nice progress, when the time is right, we'll be able to offer very nice deity worship more and more. But the simple thing of offering leaf, tulsi leaf especially, flower, fruit, or water to the form of the Lord, even in the form of a picture, that is accepted by the Lord. So we shouldn't worry too much about that, because if that doesn't come as of yet in our devotional service life, it's nothing to worry about. One thing is we should practice this process of hearing and chanting. These two are very significant. And the hearing process, Prabhupada explains, is the primary and most important function. One should hear in the association of devotees. And nowadays, we have so much opportunity because there's so much online development to make hearing in the association of devotees even more possible. And when we can physically go and hear with the devotees. And taking these simple things, Patram Pushpam Palam Toyam Yome Bhaktya Prayachati, offering with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, fruit, or water, with love and devotion, Krishna says, I will accept it. That means there's a relationship. We're offering something and Krishna's accepting. And Manmana Bhavamad Bhakta, Madhyaji Mam Namaskaru. Always thinking of Krishna, Manmana, of a Mad Bhakta, becoming his devotee. Madhyaji, worshipping him, which you're doing with these pictures. And Mam Namaskaru, offering our obeisances to him. Krishna says, in this way, surely you will come to me without fail. So we do what is practical and what is within our means. And this way we will make nice progress if it's done with devotion. And as we regularly hear and chant and try to help others understand also wherever possible, then that will help us assimilate this science of Krishna very nicely. And we'll make very good progress. I hope that's all right. I hope that makes some sense.
Yes, thank you very much. I have a follow-up question, if it's okay to ask.
Yes?
May I? Thank you. You mentioned something about the son who will help the father to get come to better places. But then when I'm thinking, what happened to the mother then? Who will help the mother?
The son will also help the mother because the father and mother, they're the parents of the son. So, and as we see in this chapter, that if the father is doing nice devotional service, then the mother also gets half the benefit. So it can't be bad, can it? And if she's worshipping in her own right, then she's getting double bubble.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah, is that all right? Is
Okay.
that all right?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yes,
Okay.
thank you very much. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Okay, just does anyone else have any questions? If you want to unmute and ask.
Prabhu, what is sacred thread? Why do we offer the Lord's sacred thread?
Because he's the original Brahmin, and he is also teaching that these are part of his paraphernalia. And if we want to be associated with the Lord, then we have to become purified. Of course, the men, they wear the sacred thread, and the ladies, they don't. But the Lord, he wears a sacred thread because that's how he is. That's how he likes to be. He likes to also glorify the Brahmins. He likes to be always absorbed in meditation, but his meditation is on himself. Our meditation is on him. So the Lord, he also, as we read in the Krishna book, every day Krishna would rise early and perform his meditation after taking his bath. But whereas we would meditate on him, he has no one else to meditate on except himself, to understand how his glories are ever increasing. Is that all right?
Yes, Prabhu, thank you. So this is such a nice chapter.
Yeah.
So if you want a very peaceful family, just follow the procedure, and Krishna will bless us, unlimitedly.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, Prabhu, if I can just ask a final question, if that's okay. I think with regards to Sadevi Mataji's question, if parents do not have a son or any children whatsoever, what do they do there in terms of?
This Puṁsavana Vrata is recommended, and they can get a very nice son.
Okay. Right.
That's what this chapter is about.
Sure. But if they're not blessed with a son, what should they be doing though?
Well, this is how to develop this. Because also in the third canto, you'll see how Kardama Muni and his wife, they conceived a child, first of all, because the woman was too much attached sexually to her husband. Then the female children were born. But later, by the purification of the Lord, when the time was right, the Lord will appear. We can't artificially expect a son, but this here is described that we perform this vrata, and then we should have faith that the Lord will appear. He will send a good son. So if one doesn't have a good son, then at least one can make the Lord one's child and worship him and appreciate him and decorate him nicely, tend to him. One can worship the deity, but not artificially. One should follow the guidance of the advanced devotees. But essentially, we should know that the more advanced relationship of God being the father of everyone is to be, as discussed in this chapter, as he agrees to be dependent on his devotee. So that will come in due course. But in the meantime, we should cultivate devotional service and depend on the Supreme Lord for our progressive protection.